Hey there, so the title of this video is A Time to Heal. I was inspired to call it that based on Ecclesiastes 3, where you find that. We're going to share that in just a minute. I want to talk a little bit, though, about Ecclesiastes and how I think it dovetails into current events, the events of last week, their aftermath, what the country is feeling, how divided it is, and what happens next. I'm not going to get into any specifics of that, nor the politics of that, but I'm going to get into the God aspect of that, and I think Ecclesiastes is a really good place to go. Last year, I read a book, I think the title is Live Your Life Backwards. It is a study of Ecclesiastes. If you are not aware, Ecclesiastes is seen by many pastors as a bummer of a book. I don't want to preach on it because it just seems so gloom and doom. We're not entirely sure who wrote it, but we believe it's King Solomon, or at least there are Bible academics who that's the prevailing theory for a number of reasons, things that the author says. But from the beginning, it just sounds like a study in clinical depression. Chapter 1, there's nothing new under the sun, day in, day out, day in. You do the same old stuff, same old drudge. Maybe you get rich, maybe you have lots of women like Solomon did. In the end, you die, and you leave it to someone else and you're forgotten. You need to read the whole book, though. The author of Live Life Backwards says what you need to do is consider the grave your preacher. I love that. Consider the grave your preacher, work back from the grave, knowing how finite human life is. And he argues that we have eternity wired into our soul, which is why we try to predict the future, try to control the future, try to be our own God, being God in charge of our own universe. When we surrender that, when we recognize life is so short, but our eternity is set if we've accepted Jesus Christ, that we can look at life differently. We can live a full life, but not on our terms. That's where it gets important. And that's where I want to go to Ecclesiastes 3. Now, this is a very popular piece of the Bible. A lot of people know the verses. Many people know it because it inspired a 1960s folk rock song, Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds, as composed by Pete Seeger. So let me share that with you. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, which are established by God, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal. Again, all planned by God. A time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8. This too can be perplexing for people. It is, well, how am I supposed to know what those seasons are? What does that mean in my life? A time to heal, a time to... And how am I supposed to know when? You're not. You're not at all. That's what Solomon or whomever the author was, that's what they're saying. All of those are ordained by God. All of those seasons are established by God. Where we get into serious trouble is when we perhaps accidentally make ourselves God when we think we know the plan. And then when we see the plan not go our way, we get angry. We get frustrated. Well, this is what God wanted. I know this is what God wanted. Whatever it may be. And it leads to almost all of the conflict in the world, at least among believers. Well, God is behind my plan. I know, I brought it to Him. I said, this is a great plan, right, God? That's not how God works. God establishes every season, not just the celestial seasons, every season of our lives and the things that impact us. Health, wealth, politics, all in His hand. That includes elections and epidemics. He sets the season. And yes, that includes a time to heal, even if that's not our inclination. He sets the time to heal, the time to love, the time for peace. We need to be attentive to that. We need to check ourselves. Yeah, but this is what I wanted. I'm sure that's what God wanted. We're never sure of that. We need to go to Him, pray, and pray for His will, whatever that may be. Bottom line, you are in charge of nothing. And when you try to take charge of things is when this broken world gets even more broken. There is a time to heal. When He lets us know, we ignore at our own peril. God bless.